Hello everyone and welcome back once again. This is your history teacher here, and this time I'm here with a new chapter of grade 6 NCERT, that is from hunting, gathering to growing food. Students, if you remember in the previous chapter, means chapter number 1, we learned and discussed that where did the early man basically lives and which kind of place they used to choose to live in. And students, we also learned in the previous chapter that why do we need to learn history and what is the importance of history in our life and what is the importance of dates in history. Now students, in this chapter you will learn that how the early men started to lead a settled life, and we will also learn that how they become from hunter-gatherer to a food producer. So let's start. The earliest people, why were they on the move? Students, as in your chapter number 1, we already learned and discussed that about 2 million years ago in the Indian subcontinent, people used to live as a hunter-gatherer life, and this name means hunter-gatherer has been provided them as they hunted wild animals, caught fish and birds, gathered fruits, roots, nuts, seeds, leaves, stalks and eggs for their foods, and that's why that time they were also known as hunter-gatherer. Let's move on towards the next slide. Students, now the question is why the hunter-gatherer always used to move from one place to another. Now students, there are many reasons due to which hunter-gatherer used to move from one place to another. As number 1, if they had stayed at one place for a long time, they would have eaten up all the available plant and animal resources of that surrounding place. That's why they have to move from that place when all the available plants and animal resources were eaten up by them. Students, as we know, animals always roaming from one place to another for their food. So hunter-gatherers also used to move from one place to another in searching of those animals by follow their movements to hunt them. So for hunting purpose, hunter-gatherers used to move from one place to another. The third reason, people may have moved from season to season in search of different kind of plants. And students, as you all know that the food that we eat, means to say the vegetable, the fruits that we eat, all are seasonal, all are not available at all seasons. So that time people moved one place to another in different season in search of different kind of plants. The next reason due to which hunter-gatherer have to move from one place to another is water. Students, that time people have to move from one place to another in search of water, and especially during the drying season when there were no water available at the surrounding places. So they have to move from one place to another in search of water. Students, now the question is that how do we know about these people? Students, this has been possible through an analysis of objects that were basically found by the archaeologists, which were probably made and used by the hunter-gatherers. For example, tools made of stones, bones and wood. As you can see here, these are the tools that were basically made by stones. And students, these stone tools were used to cut meat and bones and also to scrape bark from trees and hides animal skins, as well as to chop fruit and roots. Now let's move on towards the next slide. Students, now as you can see here, the heading choosing a place to live in means to say that hunter-gatherer usually preferred to which kind of place to live in. Students, that time people preferred to live in that kind of place where the availability of water is sufficient, such as rivers and lakes. And secondly, they tried to find that kind of place where the sufficient good quality of the stones was easily available, because that time it was important for hunting. So they preferred to live that kind of place where good quality of stones was easily available. Now, the students, archaeologists have also find out about the fire, and students, archaeologists have found many traces of ash in various parts of the country that show that these people at that time have invented the fire. And it is an assumption that these hunter-gatherer basically used fire as a source of light to roast meat or to scare away the animals. Let's move on towards the next slide. A changing environment. Students, around 12,000 years ago, there were many major changes in the climate of the world, and which led to the development of different type of grasslands in many years. And as many grasslands developed, so this led to an increase in the number of many animals that basically survive on the grass. So people start thinking about herding and rearing these animals, as these animals easily available for rearing. And fishing also became very important for people that time as their food. So students, as the grassland developed, it led to the beginning of farming and herding that time. As the development of grassland goes on increasing, people came to know about growing of different type of crop like wheat, barley, rice in different part of the subcontinent. And that's how they started practicing farming. And students, with the development of grassland, people also attract or comes in contact with different kind of animals, and slowly and gradually they started to domesticating those animals. And students, it is very important for all of you to know that the first animal to be tamed was the wild ancestor of dog. Means dog was the first animal that early man used to tame, and along with dog, sheep, goat, cattle used to tame by these hunter-gatherer. And basically hunter-gatherer used to domesticate those kind of animals that ate grass. And students, they not only domesticate them for their own purpose, in fact they protect these animals from the attacks of other wild animals also, and this is how they become herders. Now let's move on towards the next slide. A new way of life means how these hunter-gatherers start a new way of life. Students, as we discussed in the earlier slides, that with the development of the grasslands, people used to grow different kinds of crops, and once they started to growing crops, they had to stay in the same place for a long time for looking after the plants, watering, weeding, and driving away animals and birds from the crops till the grain ripened. And once the crop ripened, they thinking of storing the grain for food and seeds. And students, that's why they began making large clay pots and started to weave baskets or dug pits into the ground for storing the grains and the seeds. And for storing animals, they also used to build different kind of shelter where they could store their animals that they basically reared that time towards a settled life. The students, archaeologists have found different kind of evidences, as in the form of traces of huts or houses at some of the major sites of the Indian subcontinent, which shows that the people of that time have a stable life. And students, archaeologists have also found many cooking huts, means to say many cooking vessels, both inside and outside the huts, which suggests that depending on the weather, people used to cook different kind of food, either indoor or outdoors. As you basically observe in your villages that during the summer season, people used to cook food outside the kitchen, and during winter season they used to cook food inside the house in kitchen, and they basically use a chulla in which they cook their food. So archaeologists also found same kind of cooking huts both inside and outside the huts. And as you can see here, archaeologists also found different kinds of vessels like this, pots and this kind of mortar and pestles during their excavations. And these evidences prove that people used these kind of things that time. And students, archaeologists also found different kind of stone tools, as we already discussed in the second slide, that archaeologists found different kind of tools that prove that they use these kind of stone tools for chopping, cutting, and for different purposes. And students, many of the tools were polished to give a fine cutting edge. And students, mortar and pestle are basically used by the hunter and gatherer for grinding grain. And in fact, in the present time also, we used mortar and pestles for grinding and crushing garlic and ginger. And students, you will amazed to know that apart from stone tools, some of the tools were also made from bones. Students, archaeologists also found different kind of earthen pots, as we already discussed in the earlier slides. These pots were used for decoration and for storing different kind of things. And students, from some places, archaeologists also excavated or also found different kind of clothes evidences that proves that people used to weave clothes that time. Now, students, here is a case study of Mehergarh. Students, this site means Mehergarh is located in a fertile plain near the Bolan Pass. And students, this Bolan Pass is one of the most important routes into Iran. And students, Mehergarh was probably one of the places where people learned to grow barley and wheat and rear sheep and goats for the first time in this area, means to say in this Bolan Pass area. And students, it is one of the earliest villages that we know about. And students, when archaeologists excavated this site, they found many animal bones here, and bones of wild animals such as deer and pig, and also bones of sheep and goats were found by the archaeologists. And other finds at Mehergarh include the remains of square or rectangular houses, and each house had 4 or more compartments, some of which may have been used for storage. And students, you will amazed to know that archaeologists also find out that when people die, their relatives and friends generally pay respect to them. People of that time look after them, perhaps in the belief that there is some form of life after death, means to say people of Mehergarh believe that there is a life after death. And how archaeologists find out this? Archaeologists found different kind of burial sites there, means at Mehergarh. And students, in one instance, the dead person was buried with goats, which were probably meant to serve as food in the next world. Now students, just chapter number 2 is finished here, and this is all about your chapter number 2. I will be come back soon with a new chapter. Till then, stay home, stay safe.